It started like any ordinary afternoon, quiet, peaceful, with people going about their day near the market square. A simple woman, dressed in a faded coat and worn shoes, walked along the edge of the road, carefully avoiding puddles left behind from the early morning rain. She didn't have much, but she moved with calm dignity, carrying a small bag of groceries, her eyes lowered and her steps careful. That's when a sleek black SUV came tearing around the corner, music blasting, tires hissing through the mud without. Slowing down, the car drove straight through a deep puddle, sending a huge splash of dirty water all over the woman. She gasped, frozen in shock. Mud streaked across her clothes and face. The SUV screeched to a stop a few feet ahead. Out stepped a well-dressed woman in high heels and sunglasses, the kind of person who thought rules didn't apply to her. She smirked, said something under her breath, and tossed her hair like it was all a joke. What she didn't realize was that someone else had been watching the whole thing. Someone who wasn't just another bystander. From the far side of the street, eyes narrowed. A witness who had the power to change everything. And in that moment, the rich woman's careless cruelty was about to come back around, in a way she never expected, because sometimes the person you humiliate in public might have powerful friends, or an even stronger story to tell. The woman stood there for a moment, stunned, her hands trembling as the cold, muddy water soaked through her clothes. People nearby glanced her way but quickly looked away, not wanting to get involved. The SUV roared off, leaving behind the thick scent of expensive exhaust and that echo of smug laughter. The simple woman didn't say a word. She just gathered herself quietly and walked away, still dripping but holding her head high. Across the street, an older man leaned on a cane near a shaded bench. He'd watched everything, the splash, the insult, and the way the woman carried herself afterward. But what no one else knew was that he wasn't just some retired guy wasting time at the square. His name was David Moreno, and he owned half the businesses on that block. He'd started with nothing, worked hard his whole life, and never forgot where he came from. Seeing that moment unfold stirred something deep in him. Later that day, David asked around and learned that the woman's name was Maria, a single mother working 2 jobs, saving every extra penny to put her daughter through nursing school. The rich woman? Amelia Thornwell. Daughter of a property mogul, and someone who believed her money gave her the right to treat others like dirt. David wasn't interested in revenge. Not exactly. But something in him knew this wasn't something to ignore. Respect had to mean something. And Maria? She wasn't going to stay invisible much longer. Over the next few days, David kept an eye out for Maria. He found her working the early shift at a local diner, polite, quick on her feet, always smiling even when customers were rude or impatient. She never complained, never asked for favors. It bothered him more than he expected, seeing someone work that hard with so little recognition, especially after what he'd seen with Amelia. That moment by the fountain wasn't just a rich woman being careless. It was how she carried herself everywhere. Reports of her bullying tenants, firing staff without cause, and showing off her wealth like a weapon started trickling in. David quietly started asking more questions. He talked to shop owners, employees, even a gardener who once worked at the Thornwell estate. The stories painted a clear picture. Amelia's entitlement wasn't new. What was worse, she'd recently convinced her father to buy a string of properties downtown with plans to turn them into luxury spaces, pricing out small businesses and longtime residents. Meanwhile, Maria kept her head down, unaware of any of this. Her daughter, Elena, had just gotten accepted to a nursing program, and Maria was trying to pick up more hours to help with tuition. She didn't know that David was building something in the background, slowly, deliberately. Because while money had helped Amelia push people around, David knew influence came from something deeper. And the next time paths crossed, it wouldn't be Maria left standing in silence. Something was shifting, and everyone could feel it. A week later, the community board meeting was announced, open to the public, but usually only attended by a few residents who cared enough to listen. This time, the small hall was packed. Word had spread. David had made sure of it. Flyers, quiet conversations, even a few social media posts had stirred enough interest. Maria sat near the back, still in her diner uniform, not knowing she was about to be at the center of it all. Amelia arrived late, as usual, heels echoing on the floor like she owned the place. She barely glanced at anyone, already bored with whatever community concerns were on the agenda. But when a petition was introduced, signed by dozens of local business owners and renters, calling for a review of unethical property deals and community harm caused by recent acquisitions, she froze. Then David stood up. He didn't raise his voice or point fingers. He just told the truth. How longtime shopkeepers were being forced out. How workers like Maria were being stepped on while people like Amelia paraded through life without consequence. The crowd shifted. Whispers turned into murmurs of support. Someone clapped. Maria looked stunned. Amelia, flushed and tense, tried to interrupt, but the board asked her to wait. For once, her last name didn't shield her from criticism. Tension. In the room was electric, because everyone could sense it. Something big was about to happen. And no one, especially Amelia, saw what was coming next. Just as Amelia tried to regain her footing, brushing off David's claims with rehearsed charm, a soft voice rose from the back of the room. It was Mrs. Lyle, an older woman who'd lived in the neighborhood for over 40 years. She stood slowly, holding a folder. "Actually," she said, eyes fixed on Amelia, "I have something to add." The room fell silent. She opened the folder and pulled out a few neatly stapled papers, copies of zoning documents, property transfer forms, and a suspiciously rushed approval signature. "This shows Amelia's company reclassified 3 properties, including my cousin's old shop, just weeks before the construction crew showed up. No notice, no compensation, just a check-marked relocation fee that never cleared." The tension shifted again. People leaned in. Amelia's expression faltered. "That's not," she began, but the crowd was no longer buying her version. Then, another hand went up. Kevin, a quiet guy who ran the local mechanic shop. "You evicted my family from the apartment above the garage, claimed there were safety concerns, but the very next week, the building was sold. It wasn't just about Maria anymore. This was a pattern, and everyone was finally connecting the dots." Maria sat frozen, gripping her purse, realizing this wasn't just revenge or justice. It was a reckoning. The community was turning, and then, just as the board chair tried to calm things down, a reporter's camera light flipped on in the back of the room. "Live stream. Thousands already watching." Amelia had no idea what was about to hit her. The room was already buzzing with whispers when the reporter stepped forward, introducing herself as from a local outlet that had been investigating Amelia's development deals. "We've been tracking a string of property flips, hush payments, and code violations," she said, holding up a flash drive. "And it all leads back here, to Amelia and her so-called redevelopment company." The crowd gasped. Maria looked stunned, barely able to believe what she was hearing. Her simple life, disrupted by one moment of humiliation, had just pulled back the curtain on something far bigger. Amelia's confident mask cracked. She fumbled for her phone, trying to make a call, but someone from the board politely asked her to sit down. The chairperson, finally breaking his silence, promised an internal investigation and immediate suspension of all projects tied to Amelia's company. People clapped. Some stood. Maria felt like the weight she'd carried for days had finally been lifted, but just when it seemed like everything was wrapping up, the twist came. A second reporter spoke up, this one from a national news channel. "We've uncovered more. One of the properties Amelia forced out. It belonged to a disabled veteran, and the lawsuit is already in motion. Federal investigators might get involved now." That changed the tone completely. What started as a cruel splash of muddy water had exposed a chain of corruption, injustice, and greed. And Maria? She quietly slipped out of the building, her dignity intact, knowing she didn't need revenge. Truth had done the work for her. Outside the town hall, the cool evening breeze brushed against Maria's face. She stood quietly on the steps for a moment, taking in the murmurs from the crowd behind her. Some people nodded at her in silent respect. Others came over to say they were sorry, for not stepping in, for not noticing earlier. It wasn't the kind of attention Maria ever wanted, but this time it felt honest. She hadn't yelled, she hadn't fought dirty, she just stood her ground. That simple act had started a chain reaction. The news about Amelia spread fast. By the next morning, her company's signs were being taken down from several construction sites. Community leaders called for a full audit of the development board, and local news channels kept replaying the town hall clip where Maria stood quietly while truth unraveled around her. For a woman who lived a quiet life, mostly keeping to herself, Maria had unintentionally become a symbol of how standing up in the smallest way can shift something bigger. Back at her cottage, she returned to her garden. It looked the same as